Tampa Bay just saw snow flurries for the first time in 16 years. 2,500 frozen iguanas fell from trees across South Florida, and a 78-year-old grandmother in Nashville has been without heat for 6 days straight. Orlando crashed to 24 degrees, the coldest in 90 years. Miami shattered a temperature record that stood since 1909, and right now, as I'm recording this, the models are showing something even bigger forming for mid-February. The Air Force had to deploy a Hurricane Hunter aircraft into a winter storm because forecasters genuinely didn't know what this thing was becoming. And honestly, that should tell you everything about how unusual this pattern is. Hey everyone, Tom Hadley here, and what you're about to see isn't just a recap of what happened. It's a warning about what the data is now projecting for the next 14 days. Before I dive in, drop your location in the comments right now. Tell me if you're still digging out, dealing with power outages, or if things have finally started to moderate where you are. Because here's the thing that's keeping me up at night. We have a confirmed stratospheric warming event happening right now. And that means the worst of winter might not be behind us, it could still be ahead. But first, let me tell you about Margaret. She's the grandmother I mentioned at the top, and her story is exactly why I take these forecasts so seriously. Her daughter posted online that Margaret has been rotating between neighbors' houses and sitting in her car with the heater running just to stay warm. 6 days without power in her own home. She's 78 years old, she's lived in Nashville her entire life, and she's never experienced anything like this. That's not something that should happen in America in 2024. And Margaret isn't alone. Nashville Electric Service is telling customers they won't have full restoration until February 9th. That's potentially 2 full weeks without power. Meanwhile, utility executives are sitting in heated offices making excuses, while families like Margaret's are literally fighting to survive, and nobody's being held accountable. That's the human cost of what we're dealing with. That's why these numbers matter, and that's why I need you to understand what just happened and what could be coming next. So let me walk you through Winter Storm Gianna, because some of these numbers genuinely shocked me, and I've been doing this long enough that it takes a lot to surprise me. This system, developed off coastal Georgia, exploded into a bomb cyclone in under 24 hours, and its pressure dropped so fast it was 25% beyond what even defines a bomb cyclone. That kind of rapid intensification is something we see with hurricanes, not winter storms, and definitely not at a latitude where these systems almost never form. The coastal areas of North Carolina got absolutely devastated, and these are towns that barely see flurries in a typical winter, suddenly buried under historic snowfall. Pelletier on the Crystal Coast recorded 19.5 inches. Bath in Beaufort County saw 17 inches, their first foot of snow since 1958. That's 66 years of waiting for something like this. Newport recorded 15 inches, their first foot since 1989. And New Bern completely shattered their city record with 12.5 inches of snow. And then the temperature record started falling like dominoes. From Ohio all the way down to the Florida Keys, some of these hadn't been touched in over a century. Columbus, Ohio dropped to -9, breaking a 22-year-old record, while New York's Islip hit exactly 0 degrees, and Chicago's wind chill crashed to a brutal -36. Asheville saw -27 with 50 miles per hour gust. New Orleans dropped to -14 wind chill, and even Atlanta warned residents about wind chills between -10 and 5 degrees. And then there's the truly bizarre phenomena that honestly sounds made up, but I promise you every word of this is real and documented. Gulf effect snow reached as far south as Sarasota, Cape Coral, and Fort Myers, places where people move specifically to escape winter weather. One wildlife company in South Florida collected 2,500 cold-stunned iguanas in just 2 days because the reptiles literally fell out of trees when the temperatures plummeted. The storm even reached into Canada, with Dover, Nova Scotia picking up 11 inches, and the Bermuda Weather Service had to issue gale warnings as the system passed by their island. Now, with that context in mind, Let me run through the cities because I know that's what most of you clicked for. And I've got over 80 locations to cover with specific numbers.
Starting with the Northeast, where the snow totals from Gianna were absolutely staggering, and where the next system could potentially add even more. New York City got buried under 22 to 30 inches depending on your part of the metro. Average temperature now sitting at 35 degrees with highs of 44 and lows of 28. Ulster County, New York recorded a full 30 inches. That's 2.5 feet of snow that people are still actively digging out from as I record this. Boston sitting at 22 inches, average temperature 29 degrees. This is the heaviest snowfall dump they've experienced in 5 years, and conditions remain cold and snowy. Pittsburgh got absolutely slammed with 23 inches of heavy wet snow. Average temperature 30 degrees, and that lake effect machine just keeps cranking out additional flurries. Philadelphia at 20 inches, Syracuse at 22 inches, Albany at 15 inches, Providence at 14 inches, Hartford at 12 inches. The entire I-90 corridor is a frozen mess right now. Baltimore and Washington, D.C. both recorded 10 inches, average temps hovering in the mid-30s, with cold snaps expected to continue through the rest of the week. Quick question for those of you in the Northeast. How long did it actually take for the plows to reach your street? Drop it in the comments because I'm hearing some absolutely wild stories. Shout out to Mike in Syracuse who messaged me saying his street didn't see a plow for 36 hours. That's the kind of real-time information that helps everyone understand the actual impact. Now shifting over to the Midwest, this is where the Arctic air has really set up camp. And the lake effect snow machine has been running absolutely non-stop. Chicago recorded 14 inches with that brutal negative 36 wind chill during the peak. Average temperature now 26 degrees, and lake effect bands are still adding to the totals. Milwaukee at 12 inches. Average temperature 24 degrees. Minneapolis at 12 inches with an average of only 18 degrees. Highs barely reaching 28 and lows dropping to single digits. Detroit at 8 inches, average temperature 26 degrees with flurries continuing. And honestly, if your car battery survived this week, you should write it a thank you note. Indianapolis at 8 inches, Columbus at 10 inches, Cincinnati at 8 inches, Cleveland dealing with persistent lake effect. The entire Ohio Valley is completely frozen solid. Kansas City at 5 inches, St. Louis at 6 inches, Omaha at 8 inches, Des Moines cold and snowy. The Heartland got caught in this pattern just as hard as anyone. And here's where I need everyone to really lock in, because what I'm about to explain is the part of this forecast that has me genuinely concerned about the rest of February. We have a confirmed stratospheric warming event entering its early phase right now. And I want to be clear, this isn't speculation or theory. This is actively happening. What that event typically triggers is a polar vortex split and collapse. And forecasts are showing exactly that pattern developing for mid-February. In plain English, that means the freezer door that just slammed the eastern half of the country is about to swing wide open again, potentially even harder than before. Around February 8th through 11th, we're tracking another potential extreme cold outbreak, and the early data suggest it could rival or exceed what we just experienced with Gianna. Then, around February 12th through 15th, the European model ensemble shows over 40% probability of 4 or more inches of snow across the interior Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Here's the critical part, though. There's a fundamental disagreement between the major forecast models right now. And when that happens at this range, it usually signals high volatility. The European model wants a classic southern slider tracking up the coast. The GFS wants to cut the system up through the heart of the country. Completely different scenarios. They're so far apart that the Weather Prediction Center is literally averaging them. 40% European weight, 40% GFS weight, 20% Canadian, because nobody can agree. That level of uncertainty this close to a potential event is exactly why I'm watching every single model run. Small shifts right now mean massive differences in who gets hammered.
Quick check, everyone. If you're still with me at this point, drop a comment letting me know. I want to see who's actually tracking these details because what comes next is critical. Now let me cover the South because this is where the human impact has been most severe and where the recovery is going to take the longest. Charlotte tied their 1880 snowfall record with 11 inches, average temperature now 44 degrees as post-storm warming kicks in. But the damage is already done for many families. Raleigh at 4 inches, Greenville, North Carolina at 14 inches, Kinston at 15 inches, and Gumnix at a local record with 16.1 inches. Coastal North Carolina got absolutely buried. Beach Mountain recorded 13.3 inches, Marshall at 8 inches, Forest City at 6.5 inches. The North Carolina mountains saw totals that would be impressive even in New England. Atlanta at 2 inches with rain and snow mix continuing, average temperature 46 degrees, and Nashville at 6 inches, still dealing with the power crisis I mentioned earlier. And I want to come back to Nashville for a second because this situation is genuinely making me angry. And I think you need to understand the full scope of what's happening there. February 9th is the earliest estimate for full power restoration. That means families like Margaret's could go 14 days total without electricity in freezing temperatures. 14 days where elderly residents are choosing between hypothermia in their homes or the dangers of trying to travel on icy roads to find somewhere warm. The utility company keeps pushing back their timeline, keeps making excuses, and meanwhile, real people are suffering real consequences. This is a systemic failure. Memphis at 3 inches, recovering with an average temperature of 44 degrees. Louisville at 10 inches. Birmingham with minimal accumulation, but the cold penetrated all the way to the Gulf. Oklahoma City got hammered with 12 inches, average temperature now 34 degrees. Tulsa at 6 inches. The Southern Plains caught a snow band that surprised even the best models. Virginia Beach at 3 inches with chilly coastal conditions. Jacksonville warming back up to 58 degrees. The entire Southeast is in recovery mode, but another round could be coming. Florida is bouncing back quickly. Miami at 71 degrees now, but remember they broke that 116-year-old record. Orlando at 62, recovering from their coldest reading in 90 years. Tampa at 68 degrees, those historic flurries already a memory, and the Southeast may actually see 70s and isolated 80s as the warm-up progresses this week. But here's the thing, do not let those mild temperatures fool you into thinking winter is over, because that warm air surging north is actually setting up the next potential disaster. When warm, moist air from the Gulf collides with the Arctic blast expected around February 8th through 11th, that collision zone is exactly where major winter storms develop. The cities that just got hammered could be right back in the crosshairs within 10 days. It's like the atmosphere is loading up for another massive punch. Texas, after Uri in 2021 and everything that just happened. Y'all know the stakes better than anyone. Dallas at 56 degrees, Houston at 50, San Antonio at 53, Austin at 56. The Lone Star State is in good shape right now, but that grid is still under scrutiny, and experts aren't confident it can handle another major test. Stay alert out there. Now for the West Coast and mountain regions. I'm going to keep this brief because honestly, y'all have been watching the East deal with chaos while staying relatively calm. Pacific Northwest is shifting into a wet pattern. Seattle and Portland both looking at around 5 inches of rain. Temps in the low 40s. Completely different world from what the East experienced. California staying mild and rainy. San Francisco at 52. LA at 55. San Diego at 55. Enjoy that weather while the rest of us are checking heating bills and shoveling driveways. The Mountain West is the only western region with real winter action. Denver at 27 degrees with 7 inches and more cold coming. Colorado Springs at 27 with 4 inches. Phoenix. Now let me explain why the next 14 days have me more concerned than I was even before Gianna formed. Because the underlying conditions haven't changed at all. The exact same atmospheric setup that created Gianna is still in place. It hasn't weakened one bit. And the confirmed stratospheric warming could actually amplify it even further. Over 2,500 flights were canceled on January 31st alone. Atlanta's airport had 500 cancellations by mid-morning. and the ripple effects of that disruption are still being felt. If you've got travel plans in the February 12th through 15th window, I'd be watching every forecast update closely and making sure you have flexible backup plans ready. Tom Hadley here, still with you, and now I need to talk about safety, because after seeing what happened to families like Margaret's, I refuse to hold anything back on this part. If you're still without power anywhere in the affected areas, please know where your local warming center is located. And whatever you do, do not run a generator indoors. Carbon monoxide is completely odorless and colorless. It's killed people in every single major winter storm, and running a generator inside your home is simply not worth your life. Check on elderly neighbors. Check on anyone living alone. That knock on the door or that phone call could quite literally save someone's life in these conditions. Keep emergency supplies in your car if you're traveling. Blankets, water, flashlight, phone charger, because getting stranded in single-digit temps becomes life-threatening within an hour. If your pipes haven't burst yet, consider yourself lucky and keep a small trickle of water running. The thaw that's coming is actually when many burst pipes happen as ice expands. All right, here are my 3 bold predictions for the next 2 weeks, and I want you to screenshot these right now because I'm putting my credibility on the line. Prediction 1, Buffalo specifically hits a wind chill of negative 35 degrees or colder by February 10th. I'm calling that exact city and that exact number. Prediction 2, Philadelphia gets at least 6 inches of accumulating snow from the February 12th through 15th system. The European model is right and the GFS is wrong on this one. Prediction 3, Charlotte, the city that just tied an 1880 record, sees measurable accumulating snow again before February ends. This pattern isn't done with the Carolinas. Those are specific cities, specific numbers, specific time frames. If I nail all 3, then you know I'm reading this pattern correctly. If I miss, then I'll own it publicly. Here's what I'm watching over the next 72 hours and what should absolutely be on your radar as well. First, the brief warm-up through midweek. Enjoy it, but do not trust it. The atmosphere is actively reloading, and that warm air is going to collide with cold air right behind it. Second, every single model run for the February 12th through 15th system, because small shifts in the storm track mean huge differences in who gets hit and who gets missed. Third, power restoration progress, especially in Nashville, because 2 weeks without electricity is completely unacceptable, and someone needs to be held accountable for that failure. And fourth, the polar vortex evolution happening in the stratosphere right now, because what happens up there will determine exactly how brutal late February becomes for all of us. Send this video to anyone you know who got hit by Gianna, especially if they're still dealing with power outages. They need to know another round could potentially be coming. If this breakdown helped you understand what we just went through and what to prepare for next, smash that like button, because it makes a massive difference in reaching more people. Subscribe if you haven't already, because this winter pattern is not weakening. The polar vortex collapse could make the next 2 weeks even more eventful than the last 2. I'll be watching the overnight model runs tonight, and if anything shifts significantly, I'll have an update out before you even finish your morning coffee tomorrow. Tom Hadley here. I genuinely appreciate every single one of you who watches these forecasts. Stay warm, stay safe, and please check on your neighbors tonight. Remember Margaret, the 78-year-old grandmother in Nashville, sitting in her car just to stay warm? Remember the 2,500 iguanas falling from trees? Remember Tampa seeing snow for the first time in 16 years? This winter is not playing by normal rules. The pattern that created Gianna is still here. It's not done yet, and letting your guard down right now would be a mistake. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll see you tomorrow with the latest updates. Peace.